Testimonies of temptation are hard to find. There are very few songs written about being tempted, and almost none of them have any stories attached to them. The unfortunate reality is that Christians don't tend to talk about real temptation and struggling with sin. In order to find a testimony a little less polished and a little more honest, we're going to talk about the life of someone a bit more recent, Johnny Cash. We are all shaped by our upbringing and environment, and Johnny Cash was no different. He grew up around church, gospel music, and radio. He lived in a poor family during the Depression era, and at the age of 5, he was already working in the cotton fields with his family. Johnny was a creative child, a constant dreamer, drawn to music from the very beginning. This often put him at odds with his hard-working, blue-collar father. Johnny idolized his older brother Jack and was devastated when he died in a tragic sawmill accident. Because of these things, Johnny Cash wanted to leave the hurt of home, looking for freedom and success in a life as a musician. He quickly found both. Johnny soon met Sam Phillips of Sun Records and plunged into the life of a touring musician. He met with immediate success and was soon on the road more than home. In his autobiography, Cash, he said, "My affair with pills had already begun. It quickly became all-consuming, eating me up for the next decade or so." What started with an occasional pill to stay awake and a beer to calm down quickly mastered him and became an addiction to alcohol, amphetamines, and barbiturates. Perhaps as a way to deal with his success, a taxing life as a performer, his strained relationship with his wife and kids, or his continual running from the Lord Jesus, he yielded to the temptation all around him and worshiped his music and the various substances that sustained him. Johnny Cash said this of his addictions: "The first and perhaps worst thing about it was that every pill I took was an attempt to regain the wonderful, natural feeling of euphoria I experienced the first time. And there was not a single one of them, not even one among the thousands that slowly tore me away from my family and my God and myself, that ever worked." Bit by bit, Johnny Cash destroyed his life. He wrecked numerous cars and was arrested for bringing a massive quantity of amphetamines across the border from Mexico. He began canceling shows and eventually whole tours. He even carelessly burned several hundred acres of the Los Padres National Wildlife Reserve and became the only individual sued by the state of California. Worst of all, he completely wrecked his marriage and left his 4 daughters virtually fatherless. One thing you didn't see in the movies is that as he hit rock bottom, Johnny Cash decided to take his own life. As a kid, he had explored the depths of Nickajack Cave, an immense, abandoned cave system that was about to become a water reservoir. Many people went into the cave, got lost, and died over the years. Johnny crawled into Nickajack Cave to lose himself and to die. He crawled for hours until his flashlight went out. He described the experience like this: "The absolute lack of light was appropriate, for at that moment I was as far from God as I have ever been. My separation from Him, the deepest and most ravaging of the various kinds of loneliness I'd felt over the years, seemed finally complete." Then, thinking he was near death, he said, "I felt something very powerful start to happen to me, a sensation of utter peace, clarity, and sobriety. There in Nickajack Cave, I became conscious of a very clear, simple idea. I was not in charge of my own destiny. I was going to die at God's time, not mine." Johnny Cash miraculously crawled out on his hands and knees in the total darkness. When he got out, he said, "I was ready to commit myself to God and to do whatever it took to get off drugs, and I wasn't lying." Cash went on to say, "Eventually, slowly, with relapses and setbacks, I regained my strength and sanity, and I rebuilt my connection to God. I was able to face an audience again, performing straight for the first time in more than a decade. God had done more than speak to me. He had revealed His will to me through other people, family, and friends. The greatest joy of my life was that I no longer felt separated from Him. Now He is my counselor, my rock of ages to stand upon. Through submission to Jesus, Cash faced his temptations and overcame. Today we sing one of his great gospel songs, Redemption, as a remembrance of the work that Jesus did to set us free from the power of sin. Years later, Johnny wrote, "It's an ongoing struggle. I do know, though, that if I commit myself to God every morning and stay honest with Him and myself, I make it through the day just beautifully."